Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here, coming at you from the Knife Center, and welcome to Knife AQ, episode number 92, the series where I answer all of your knife questions, whether they are sharp or dull. This week, we're talking about a few things, including what are some of the best multi-tools if you're going camping, and we're also going to continue our discussion that was started earlier this week, talking about the Bugout and its main competitors. Let's get into it. All right, folks, if you're new to this series, what we do is I go through the comments section below these videos and pull out some good questions to answer and to feature on the actual video itself, or the next video, I should say. So if you want a chance to have one of your questions featured, just leave them in the comments section below. First question this week comes from Justin Simpson. I've been looking for a good multi-tool for under $100 that will be good for my camping kit. Thanks. This is a good one. And I'm gonna start out with, well, back up a little bit. There's kind of two routes you can take when you're talking about multi-tool. You didn't specify whether you were looking for something like a pliers-based multi-tool, a la Leatherman, or a knife-based multi-tool, something like a Swiss Army knife. So I'm gonna go through a couple options along each pathway here. I'm going to start with one tool here that's actually just over your budget. And the reason for it is this. This is a Leatherman Signal. It is a pliers-based multi-tool. And as prevalent as this style is, and as popular as it can be for folks who head outdoors, there's not really a lot out there that's specifically designed or geared towards the camper or the survivalist specifically. Except for this right here, the Signal. Comes in at about $130, so it's not too high above your budget. So depending on what you think of this, you might want to kind of stretch up towards this. But I've got several other options here that are less than that $100 point too. But here's the cool thing about the Signal. It's got some extra doodads on it, which I'll get to, which kind of lean into the outdoors usage. But as far as the main tool set, it has basically what I consider the absolute bare minimum, or the refined down to just what you need selection of tools for outdoors usage. And those tools, besides the main blade, which of course you're going to want, are a nice wood saw, which both of those two implements are accessible from the outside of this tool, and they are liner locking as well. Wood saw, shouldn't need to explain why that's going to be useful at camp, whether you're sawing off tent stakes or doing other kinds of little crafty projects. Being able to saw through wood is a good thing. The blade, I'll admit, this is like the one complaint I have with the Signal, and that in this case is the partially serrated edge on this knife. I'm not totally against partial serrations in an outdoor scenario, but if you're gonna do them out near the tip. There's some Swiss Army knives that do this, because in outdoors usage, you're gonna wanna be whittling probably if you're using the blade for that type of thing. And those serrations are right where you're gonna wanna be push cutting with the heel of the blade. Can you get around it? Yes, absolutely. But like I said, that's my one quibble with the Signal. But anyway, blade, saw, and then moving to the inside, we have maybe a little bit less thought of by some folks, the awl. Very, very key, I think, to an outdoors multi-tool. And you want the style that can have a sharp edge and the hole hole through the tool itself. Because you can do a couple things with this. One, heavy materials, you can use this to help repair those. Stitching is what I'm talking about specifically. It's difficult to do without a specialized tool like this. These are also great for boring holes in things, specifically wood, for fire prep, any other type of little bushcrafty tasks and that sort of thing. Very handy tool right there. These tools lock on the Signal. The other thing we have here is a can opener. This one, maybe a little bit less necessary than some, because there aren't as many cans you actually need to use a can opener for nowadays, but in a camping scenario, opening up a can of beef stew or chili or something to cook over the fire, there's a chance you might need that. So this one, if a tool doesn't have this, I'll let it slide a little bit, but I like having it nonetheless. And then as far as the other typical multi-tool things you think about, screwdrivers, right? maybe a little bit less necessary depending on the type of camping you do. That's the caveat in this case. If you're out hiking with minimal gear, you might not need to drive screws into anything. If you're car camping, maybe there's some other gear like your stove. Maybe it's a little cantankerous. You need a little help twisting a screw here and there. I like what Leatherman offers here with their modular bit driver here. You've got a Phillips and a flathead that slide right in there. They also sell replacement bits in a wide variety of different, units that'll let you kind of tailor it to the gear you need to actually fix while you're out and about. And then, of course, we haven't talked about the pliers yet. Pliers-based multi-tools, what I've found these really helpful for when out at camp, more than anything else for me personally, is lifting stuff out of a fire, such as the bail of a pot. You're boiling water, you're cooking food, you can reach in with this, get that stuff out. Pretty handy thing. And of course, there's lots of other things you could use that for too. For a pliers-based multi-tool to be good for camping, I think it needs to have those things, all the stuff that I just ran through. This has even more, however. We've got on the back here, you've got a little hammering plate. So you can essentially use that to drive in tent stakes or beat on stuff. You've also got these really cool tools on the outside. First being a small diamond sharpener right there. You can use that to keep your blade sharp, keep other things sharp, or even file away little things you might be working on. And then on the opposite side is the tool or the added implement that gives the signal its name. And you pull this back. It can be a little finicky to get to sometimes. Hang on, pardon me. There we go. But it actually pulls out through the inside of the handle, signaling. You have a small whistle right here, and you have a little piece of ferro rod, which can be used to make a fire, whether just to keep you warm in a generic situation or as an emergency signaling thing. Fire is not a device. I almost called it a device, but that's a pretty cool addition to that tool right there. You may or may not want to consider that your primary means of whistling and fire starting. It could be that if you want. I would be maybe inclined to carry another means of doing it, and this is your emergency or your backup set, but really cool to have here. And then of course you got a bottle opener as part of the carabiner gate right there. Really cool tool, and it's really well considered for the intended use. Like I said, if you change that to a plain edge blade, I'd be 100% happy with this. As it is, I'm 95 to 98%. 98.5, maybe, let's say it like that. But if you really want to stick to less than $100, check out the rebar. Also from Leatherman, comes in about $80 right now. You're not going to get any of the extra survival doodads on the outside, and you're also not going to be able to access any of the tools from the outside at all, for that matter. But it is strongly built, and it has, like you need, the blade. It has on the other side a serrated blade as well. Pulled the wrong side out. So you get two blades with this. You also have that wood saw, and I can confirm Leatherman's wood saws do a very good job. You've also got Phillips driver, you've got the can opener on that side, and then all of these tools lock, by the way. And then moving over to the other side, you've got a couple flatheads, and you have that all. And bonus, small file there as well. Really good set of tools. Both of these obviously come with a belt sheath. The Signal also has that pocket clip on it, but it's maybe a little heavy for that. So that's about 80 bucks. Very, very good tool right there. A little bit more compact than some options too, including the budget option I'm about to show you here. Doesn't take up a lot of space. But for a true budget option that hits all of those tools that I think are necessary, the Black Fox BF203 Endurance model was in about $42. Definitely doesn't feel quite as well put together as the rebar, but this is half the price. You've got your blade there on the outside. You've got a wood saw on the outside. Feels pretty sharp. I haven't used one of them personally, so I can't comment on how they perform specifically, but it ought to do the trick. Outside, you've also got a file and a pair of scissors. Nice little bonus right there. And then moving to the inside, spring-loaded pliers, which could be nice, and the tools. Side one, we've got your can opener, bottle opener, can, bottle, and a small hook blade right there, which could be good for pulling on twine, that sort of thing. And then your awl and a Phillips on the opposite side. So those, I think, are the three main picks I would think of when going for a specific outdoor multi-tool. There are tools that are kind of bigger than the Signal that have everything you're gonna need. Thomas carries the Leatherman Free P4, I believe, yes?
Yes.
Which does have all the tools you might want, but it is more expensive than the Signal and has more, maybe more than you might want. But it's one of those good tools that'll cover all your bases. You can have it in the car and do all your stuff there, and then it'll also work when you camp. What about a Swiss Army knife? Or they're all gonna be Swiss Army knives, spoiler alert, but a knife-based multi-tool. There's a few options. Some of them do, well, you have the Spirit series and the Swiss tools and such that are like the Leathermans in their form factor, but those are more than $100 again. But as far as the pocket knife style Swiss Army knives, some of those do have some small sets of pliers, but actually I have an example over here somewhere. Here we go. Actually, this was a Boker Tech tool that almost made it on to the table, but they're smaller. Some of them move around a little bit like this because of the way they're sprung. They can help hold on to things, but they're a little less, I'd say a lot less useful for lifting pots and that sort of thing, which to me is what I've always found them most useful for, pliers most useful for in a camping scenario. So stripping things way back, I think the bare minimum, in my opinion, for a outdoors Swiss Army knife is the Camper. Comes in about $34 or $33. Very, very affordable. And a very refined set of tools here. You've got two blades, a small, or a large, and a smaller pen blade, which can be great for the smaller whittling tasks. You have got an excellent small wood saw. You've got your cap lifter there and your bottle opener on the opposite side. On the back, you've got that all. So main tools are taken care of. You also have a corkscrew, which there is a model called the Hiker, which has a Phillips head screwdriver here instead. Don't discount the corkscrew, especially for outdoors uses. I've talked about this a lot before. Not only can you store stuff like Victorinox's Fire Ant accessory in here, which adds a fire starter to your multi-tool, these can also work as an impromptu marlin spike. What I mean by that is fantastic for untying knots. Paracord especially can get cinched down really hard, and this can be great for getting in there. And then of course you've also got the toothpick and tweezers. The tweezers, in a pinch, can work with ticks, especially in an outdoor environment. That's important. Not the best tick tweezers, but they'll do in a pinch, you know the deal. Also different colors, and I will say the preferred color, my most suggested color for many outdoors tools is gonna be blue. Orange is the typical go-to, but blue can actually, in many instances, be even more visible because orange occurs a little more naturally in the natural nature. In the natural nature out there than blues do. So the reason I didn't show it on the table this time is, as you can see, the ones we have right now are not in little boxes, they're in the clam packs. So anyway, Camper's a great place to start, $33. For a little bit more money, you could get the Huntsman. Adds a nice pair of scissors, which you might like, and a parcel hook, which take it or leave it. Another outdoors favorite, which kind of breaks my rules a little bit, but it's worth mentioning, is the Farmer. Alox handles on these, they're not plastic, they are aluminum, so they're more sturdy, and the blade stock is a little bit thicker on the knife itself portion. $46 for these. You've got that wood saw, you've got your cap lifter and bottle opener, and you have an awl, but it doesn't have the hole through the middle. So you're not gonna be able to use this as easily for stitching and repairing, but you can use it for boring holes. This also makes a great scraper for tinder, or whether you're scraping a fire steel, that sort of thing. The back of the wood saw does a good job at that also. But these are really cool. Last option that I'm gonna show you is another Swiss Army knife. And this is the one you should get, I think, if you want the largest implements possible in your outdoors multi-tool, and that's the Ranger Grip 78. This one's actually the this one is the 78. I recommend the 79 because the 78 has the Phillips driver, but the 79 has the corkscrew there instead. We just didn't have that one on the shelf on filming day. On the back, you got your awl. On the front, you've got a embiggened version of the bottle opener, and you've got your can opener too. Nice big saw. I mean, look how large that is for a pocketable, like truly pocketable saw. That's really nice. And then you've got a one-hand opening blade as well. One-hand opening and locking plain edge blade. Locks on the shield right there. It's essentially a button actuated liner lock. So that is pretty cool. And being part of the extended Ranger Grip family, you've got these grippy inserts, which can of course be a nice addition in your outdoors kit. So there you go. Those are some of my kind of go-to recommendations for an outdoor Swiss Army knife, or an outdoor multi-tool.
I'm surprised you didn't mention 12-inch machete.
You know what? I had a bullet point about that. The ultimate outdoors multi-tool is probably a 12-inch machete. But it's too late for that now.
Oh well.
What do I use personally? Well, I usually have a Leatherman Wave with me, which doesn't have all the tools that I recommend, but that's because I usually have a Victorinox Outrider with me as well, which covers the bases there. The Outrider actually does cover all the things that I personally want. The Leatherman usually is in my car anyway. But anyway, coming on to our next question now, which comes from I'm Uncle Bubba. Hey DCA, I am a hotel general manager and therefore find myself doing small repairs out on my property when my maintenance guy is off. I love the thought of a small multi-tool, but due to medication I have to take, I have brittle nails. That means all the multi-tools that have nail nicks as opening mechanisms I can't use. I don't need anything major, just something with a screwdriver and maybe a pair of pliers. Any recs? Yes, indeed. And it's maybe not as small as you're thinking, but I mentioned the Leatherman Free that Thomas carries a P4. Check out the P2. It's a little bit smaller, and the reason being, you are exactly why Leatherman made this series of tools. They wanted something that was easier to open, that wasn't gonna break a fingernail. All the tools here are accessible from the outside, and all you need is just the tip of your thumb. That little tab right there, simply stick your thumb there and push, and then all the tools pop out. You can select what you need, open it up, it locks into place, and then you can unlock it, close it right back up. Super easy to do, even one-handed, as you can see. On one side, you've got a Phillips and a flathead with a little bit of a scraper tool built in. Opposite side, we already saw it a little bit, but you've got a file, another flathead, an awl, and your can opener, yes, that is the correct word. And a combo edged blade there, 420 HC. The P4 has a plain edge blade and a fully serrated blade. You've also got that pair of scissors right there, and then the pliers. And the neat thing about the kind of magnetic retention on this tool is they're very easy to flip. See how I messed it up that first time? That's okay.
They take a little breaking in.
They do. Thomas actually, to give you an idea of how much we believe in this free series right here, Thomas is holding his P4 right now. All right, let me see. This is Thomas's P4. He carries it every day. Longtime viewers of this channel will remember back in the day where Thomas carried a Skeletool and had for, I mean, how many years had you carried that?
It was close to 8.
About 8 years. Thomas is not a knife freak like you or I am. It takes a lot for Thomas to buy a new something. It takes even more, I think, to get him to replace something that already works for him, and the P4 is it.
I like it in the garage, because if one hand's stuck in the engine bay, then I have a free hand to get a tool.
You can still get it out, yeah, because his is nice and broken in. You can almost butterfly it open, and then, of course, as I showed before, the tools are pretty easy to get to with just one hand. In addition to being easier than a nail nick deployable thing, the fact that you can choose the tool you need with just one hand, it's a pretty nice feature. 130 bucks for the P2. I think the P4 is like 150, 160, something like that nowadays. Something like that. Check out that series right there. I think it'll be a really, really good option for you. All right, next question comes from Lufe Par. I'm a gardening hobbyist in the tropics and I just lost my knife in the field again. So I'm looking for a new blade that can bear some rain, highly visible, easy on the pocket when crouching, and sharp enough for tomato or pepper stems, but delicate for leafy greens. Well, here's my recommendation. Since you've already lost at least 2 knives, we can surmise that by your exasperated again, don't spend a lot of money. Go cheap. You know, because if you're going to stand a chance of losing it again, why keep banging your head up against that wall? I've got a folder recommendation, but the first thing I'm going to suggest or ask is, have you thought about some form of fixed blade? And if not, might I suggest, and apologies for the clam packing here, the Mora, what do they call this one? The Fishing Comfort Fillet knife. Comes in about 23 bucks, 3.5-inch stainless steel blade. It's not a Scandi grind like most of their knives. It has just a little bit of flex to it. It's not super flexy. It's a little more flexy than stiff though, I would say. I actually use and enjoy one of these in my kitchen quite frequently. It does a really good job. But it's rigid enough, I think you're gonna be able to do the gardening stuff you need. Certainly can withstand wet weather and moisture. Even the sheath is very conducive to that sort of thing. And this could live in a pocket, but you've also got a nice hook there on the back that tends to work well at staying put on a hem of your pants or through a belt. So maybe check that out. It's not the highliest visible, but it does have those bright yellow bits on it at least. Barring that, if you want a folder, basically what I did is I went to our website and typed in the word orange, sorted it, priced low to high, and found the cheapest good knife that I could feel comfortable recommending. And that's the Dozier Folding Hunter from K-Bar in orange right here. There are blue options here, but you're dealing with D2 steel in that case. You wanted rust resistant, so we're not going with that. This knife right here is about 25 bucks. You got a 3-inch blade, AUS 8 steel, which is stainless. It's not a super stainless steel, like it can spot under the right conditions a little bit, but to help out even more there, we've got a black coating on this knife, bright orange handles, and another thing, lanyard hole here, right at the back. And you can add brightly colored lanyards to all sorts of knives. You get some yellow, orange, blue paracord stuff, can even have reflective threads in it. Throw a fob on the back of that, it'll give you a little bit more grip. And depending on how you string it, you can actually, rather than just doing a fob, you can actually lanyard something to your belt so that it gives you enough range of motion to do the cutting you might need, but if you drop it, it might be dangling from your belt instead. Check those out. Super lightweight, super inexpensive, and despite that low price, very, very capable tools. All right, now we come to the segment we call Measured Once and Cut Twice, where we take a second stab at a previous topic. And this week, I wanted to focus on a lot of the cool suggestions that you folks had on our video from this past Tuesday, talking about can you beat the Benchmade Bugout, part of our Beat the Icon series. And there were some good suggestions. One of the kind of segments we talked about in that video was, what if you liked the Bugout ethos but wanted something larger? Some good suggestions came up from you folks that I didn't mention in the video. The first is the Manix 2 Lightweight from Spyderco. It's a little bit more expensive than the Bugout if you want to go with a particle steel option, but you could of course save money with the BD1N version. Here it is against the Bugout, and in addition to showing a particle steel version, we had to get the blues going to go with the Bugout. This is a pretty compelling choice actually, but it does have one caveat or one drawback, I'd say. This definitely feels like a much girthier knife, but it's not, the weight that you might expect doesn't accompany that. 2.8 ounces, or yeah, we measured it right before the video, 2.8 ounces on this version, which is 0.1 of an ounce heavier than the Sage 5 lightweight we showed, which is a much smaller knife. You've got more thickness there. It's still gonna be pretty easy to carry despite the added girth because it's so lightweight. It also has Spyderco's ball bearing lock, which operates mechanically very different from the crossbar lock of the Axis system that Benchmade uses, but you're operating it essentially the same way. However, you still get more edge with the Bugout, even though it's a, kind of a half class or a whole class down, depending on how you want to classify your classes. But yeah, check that out. More edge on the Bugout than on the Manix 2. More reach with the Manix 2, but just barely. I mean, it's so close there. So you're getting, you're getting a whole ounce more in weight for the Mannix 2, but you're not actually getting more blade in a way. Still a good knife, don't get me wrong, but that might have been a little bit as to why I didn't include it in the original video, but still a good one to talk about. Another one or suggestion that came up a lot was the Elementum family. And I'll address this in two parts. First, you've got the standard Elementum here, which, like the Bugout, is a small, simple, easy to carry, drop point bladed knife. Depending on which version you get, it can be about 2.7-ish ounces, so a bit heavier than the Bugout. Actually, about the same weight as the Mannix 2, although in hand, man, the Mannix almost feels lighter. It might be a deceptive thing because of the size of it. But anyway, the reason I didn't include the Bugout or any other non-finger safe locks except for the Wee Banter was I included the Wee Banter as kind of like a, okay, I know a lot of folks are gonna talk about this as an option, so I have to address it. But in my mind, to be a true Bugout competitor in a way, you gotta have a finger safe lock. And liner locks just don't really do it. Apart from that, it's not bad. The blade stock is a noticeable bit thicker, even though you got a hollow grind to keep it thinner behind the edge, similarly to the thin flat grind on the Bugout. I can kind of give it to you a little bit. I'll give it to you a little more with the button lock Elementum, however. It's a little bit larger, kind of a half size up, I'd say, from the Bugout, which sits kind of in between these two sizes of the Elementum. You've got the finger safe operation, works perfectly fine for lefties. You've got a thinner blade than the liner lock Elementum, almost as thin as the Bugout, but still not quite. And a little bit more of a neutral handle. Sharpened length, little bit more with the button lock Elementum. Not a terrible amount more, but this could be, I'll give you folks this one. This could be a more budget option, a more budget-oriented alternative to a slightly larger Elementum, or sorry, slightly larger Bugout. Weight on these with the micarta handles, 3.19 ounces. So you're not getting the featherweight nature, but some of the design ethos and cutting ethos comes into play a little bit. I will say for like the budgetiest alternative to a Bugout, throwing finger safe operation right out the window is probably that Dozier we looked at earlier, because these things are super light as well. Even with the added weight of that full lock back, the back spring required to make that mechanism work, 2.4 ounces. A little bit heavier than the Bugout, but not by much. Versatile shape, pretty darn thin, and you can get it in blue too, as I mentioned. Actually, there is a blue with a satin blade version in the stainless steel available. I messed that up a little bit earlier, so. One last thing that several folks mentioned was the Gerber Cedulo. $125 for that knife right here, and I've got it. This one, the reason I didn't mention this is if you're just like glancing at it on paper, like if you just see a photo, the outline, you can definitely see some similarities with the Bugout there. However, the Cedulo in hand is way more of a griptilian alternative than the Bugout. In a way, it's kind of like as if a Bugout and a griptilian kind of crossbred, you might get something like the Cedulo, because you've got a slicier blade than the griptilian, similar profile to that Bugout, not as thin. I mean, you can see the difference right there in the blade thicknesses, but you've got a girthier handle like the griptilian. So that's kind of why this one didn't enter into it for me. I don't really consider the griptilian to be a bigger alternative to the Bugout, and as such, the Cedulo's in the same ballpark for my internal classification. What's the weight on the Cedulo though? I don't know. 3.6 ounces. So you're gaining a lot of weight and sharpened length between this and the Bugout. You've got a skosh more on the Cedulo, and like just barely. So doesn't really work for me too much, but a good knife, don't get me wrong, but a different type of knife in my mind. But let me know what you thought. Let me know if you think I'm off base on that, and keep the bug out alternative suggestions coming. I think it was a fun video, certainly got a lot of engagement as well, and opened up some more avenues for conversation. So that's pretty cool. All right, now we come to our lightning. Oh, no, we don't. One other thing that came up a lot was the Kizer drop bear, which I'm very much looking forward to. It has been announced by Kizer, but it actually hasn't made its way to dealers yet, and that's why it wasn't in the video. But that should be a pretty cool knife. Gonna be a decent bit heavier though, I think. Anyway, now we come to the lightning round. First one is from D.E. Bowen. I was wondering what knife grind is easiest for knife manufacturers and the hardest grind to pull off. Also, do most knife manufacturers grind the blades by hand? So the easiest, the easiest grind to do is a hollow grind, because in a production environment, you can grind both sides of this at the same time with essentially a wheel coming in on each side of the blade. So it takes one pass to grind both sides of the blade. Flat grind, you have to do one side at a time, so it takes a little bit longer. Hardest to do is going to be a convex grind, especially if it comes down to a zero edge like this Feldknieven fray right here. Most convex edges are going to be done by hand, even in a semi-production environment, because of the precision it takes. You're dealing with the slack of a belt typically to get that right. Hollow grinds and flat grinds, they could be set up with machines, they could be done by hand. It's going to vary depending on what company is in question. But then of course, we haven't even talked about CNC milled blades, which I guess they're all just as easy as the next one to do and very hands-off. Just push a button. Anyway.
I like buttons.
You would. Actually, I like buttons too.
I like to push your buttons.
They know. Next question comes from Big B. Is it true that Spyderco does the best heat treating? Also, if a good steel is heat treated incorrectly, is it ruined? So I will say Spyderco has a great reputation for the performance of their blades, and that's because they are heat treated well, even across the broad variety of steels that they use. And I can't think of anyone that uses more different steels than Spyderco is willing to do. As far as best, kind of impossible to say. But any steel, if heat treated incorrectly, is very easily, or can very easily be, yes, ruined. Are you going to experience that as a customer? Chances are no. Sometimes mistakes happen, things get out that shouldn't, but by and large, if something does get heat treated incorrectly, if it doesn't make it through the process right, that's going to get found when they spot check the batch of blades that went through. So probably don't have to worry about it in your case, fortunately, but yeah, any steel, if not, it's like a souffle. If you bake it wrong, it's not a souffle. It may have all the ingredients of a souffle, it may have all the ingredients of a good steel, but it is no longer a steel or a good steel and no longer a souffle as well. So, of course, the nice thing about dealing with pretty much any reputable company these days is if you were to have some kind of like catastrophic failure on a blade, K-Bar is a perfect example. I've heard of them, especially with the Becker knives, requesting the knives back if a customer has broken it, and so they can determine if there was a fault in the heat treat. And I've been known often to, just replace the blades for folks that experience that sort of thing. So companies with good warranties is another way to shield yourself from a bad piece of heat treat accidentally making it through to the end. So hope that helps. All right, which brings us to our last question of the day, our most serious question of the day, which comes from Knife Daddy 579. That's a great name, I love it. Speaking of tying the room together, what knife would the dude carry in his robe? Someone was responding to my Big Lebowski quip in a previous episode. Well, I had a good long think about this, and I think the clear answer here is the Kershaw mixtape, which of course is just going to be filled with cassettes of bowling noises, as anyone who's seen the movie should know.
Definitely not any Eagles songs.
Oh, no. He blanking hates the Eagles, by the way. Yeah, no Eagles. A lot of Creedence, though. That's all we've got for today. However, make sure to leave your questions down in the comments section below, and it'll have a chance to get plucked out and featured in a future episode. Let me know what you thought of the answers here. Let me know what you thought of the knives, and if you want to get your hands on any of them, check out the links in the description to take you over to KnifeCenter.com. And while you're browsing the site, don't forget we've got our Knife Rewards program, which means when you buy one of these knives today, you're going to be earning some free money back to be spent on your next ones. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. That's Thomas behind the camera. We're signing off. See you next time.
The knife abides.
The knife abides.